explorers, it's been quite some time since Cloudrunner Fate of the Skies was released. I want to stay upfront that I'm thrilled with the result. Making such a big, ambitious project was quite a feat, and I'm glad that people really resonate with the game and the setting. Some backers have asked me about the future of the game, and that's why I wanted to put together this video on the subject. When I designed Cloudrunner, I initially had plans for writing expanded content. One of the big things I wanted to accomplish was to release an expansion. I've also wanted to do some deep dives on the setting and lore, as well as to release more pre-written scenarios. During the production of Cloudrunner, Fred Hicks from Evil Hat responded to a statement on the Fate RPG subreddit. I'm just going to leave the statement on screen for a bit. You can pause if you need to read it in full. But it seems pretty clear that Evil Hat is going to focus more on Blades in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse. I decided to finish the game in Fate, but it left my post-launch plans in doubt. I wanted to deliver additional content, but I was admittedly worried about the longevity because even Fate's publisher seems to be moving away from it. There are some additional reasons for this. I want to move away from proprietary dice. That's an additional barrier to play, and I'm trying to move towards approachability and accessibility as a designer. If Evil Hat decides to discontinue Fate dice, that's going to make it more difficult to play in the future. I've had that situation occur with the Ubiquity system, and when Fantasy Flight spun off its RPG division to Edge Studios, I was worried that Genesis and Star Wars dice would become temporarily unavailable. I really don't want to have that level of dependency on a single source like that. Yes, I know that these were fudge dice and other companies do make them, but it's nowhere near as available as standard D6s or your standard gaming set. I still want to create all the additional content I outlined earlier. That's going to be something I want released after 2E's production. More on that in a bit. I want to start with some base criteria for whatever system I use for the next edition. I wanted to either use a D6 dice pool or a standard set of gaming dice. I love systems that use unusual dice combinations. I made Merely Sinners in Caltrop, but I also want to make sure that the dice aren't a big barrier. I also want it to be a system that's fairly modern, that way it's easy for contemporary players to jump into. I've been experimenting quite a bit with other systems, especially since we're getting a glut of open license systems that indie designers can use to power their games. If you look at my itch page, I've been making a fair amount of games in Charge and Breathless. I've also done some experimental work in Lumen. Charge is a standout because it combines the popular Blades in the Dark / Forged in the Dark system with Fate, which makes it a natural successor. I've done some preliminary work for Cloudrunner and Charge, and it works pretty well. There are certain limitations to the system, but it's a straightforward conversion that would be a good immediate fit. Another is making it a PBTA game. The system is popular, and I could certainly see it working out. That said, I've only run Monster of the Week, and I'd have to spend more time getting a feel for the base system. The third option I've found is Lumen. It's also a pretty new system, and I've run Nova before, so I have a broad idea of what it offers. Admittedly, it feels like less of a good fit than the former two options. There are other options, but these three were what sprung to mind as candidates. Cloudrunner was an extremely ambitious game, and I'm proud of the result that I got. However, as with any product, I think about the stuff that I left on the cutting room floor and compromises that I had to make for the sake of keeping the budget on track and within scope and budget. When it comes to 1E's character creation, I didn't deviate too much from Fate's default character creation process. This was workable, but it had the following drawbacks. Blank page syndrome was a big problem. Players didn't know how to fit their characters into the world and often kind of had to feel it out, especially if they didn't have any knowledge of the genre. It was difficult to ascertain what impact things like upbringing and background had on a character. So in 2E, I want to bring playbooks into the game. This way there could be some buy-in and ties to the world and other characters built in. It also means that players less familiar with the genre conventions of steampunk can get right into the game. In 1E, I added a gadget subsystem, but I found that this just kind of added slowdown and bloat to the character creation process. I'm thinking of making them function as stunts or talents. I also want to make progression more structured as well. Fate is more focused on horizontal progression. I admit I miss the feeling of, oh cool, I got a new toy. Speaking of toys, let's talk airships. I've been working on a new airship combat system that involves frantically repairing ship components in mid-battle. Trying to channel a bit of Guns of Icarus with this system, where sometimes you have to manage the ship's malfunctioning components mid-battle. Additionally, I want to remove the financial stress system from 2E. It was a compromise I made to balance the types of airships you can get. I found it unsatisfying. In 2E, I'm including a voyage system that helps to balance airships without having to kind of invoke this marginal mechanic. My plan is to port over all of the pre-written scenarios written for 1E, which includes Pillar of Solitude, The Watchful Eye, The Toy Maker, Classified Cargo, and Deceit and Masquerades. Additionally, I want to create some more pre-written content to showcase different aspects of the world. In particular, I'm planning a scenario called Clacker's Conundrum, and I want it to focus around building a machine. After the launch of 2E, I want to continue publishing content for the game. This includes the previously mentioned expansion that contains rules for creating a character that's a member of the Rayburn family, and information about what's going on the surface. I also wanted to talk a bit about the art and the soundtrack. I have the original artist and composer from 1E returning, and I'll be taking this opportunity to add in some pieces that didn't make it into 1E because of scope and budget constraints. When I designed 1E, the ambitious scope of the game meant that I didn't have extra bandwidth for much else. I designed much of 1E in a silo, and most of my updates were simple ones so I could focus on getting the game finished. This time around, I want to take the opposite approach. I want to design visibly, showing off my creative process and approach. I'm still thinking about how exactly I'm going to do this. I really like the idea of doing design streams on Twitch, but I haven't done that before. I also want to have short videos to talk about mechanics and lore. Video is going to be a big part of the process for sure. I'm currently in the research process for figuring out how to best accomplish this. Right now, I'm trying to figure out my way forward professionally. For the past few years, I've been taking jobs that don't pay well, and that I'm grossly overqualified for, because it's been difficult to find steady work writing. To that end, I've decided to take a workforce certification program that will include an internship and ideally lead to future employment. The great news is that it's in digital media production, and I think that's an exciting development. I've been exploring other media avenues for Cloudrunner as well. I think the IP is very adaptable, and I have a background in animation and writing for other forms of media. When I animated that Kickstarter video, that made me quite excited about the possibility of making an animated pilot for Cloudrunner. Furthermore, I began the process of commissioning a comic for Cloudrunner. That's been on hold since finances got tight, but I plan to return to it once things are a bit better in that regard. That may turn into a crowdfunding campaign. Originally, I didn't fund it that way because I was funding the game at the time, and I felt it would be bad optics to run a separate crowdfunding campaign for it. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in with 2E, and I'm hoping that, this will be the start of a new chapter, and I'm really looking forward to kind of this different approach where you get to see more of the design process. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing more of these, videos as well. Just the idea of integrating video into the process, I think would be great. So yeah, that's exciting news, and forever we fly.